Let's break it down. Most investors make the same mistake. They either go for the cheapest properties in the worst areas looking for yields, or they go straight to the most expensive properties thinking that prestige equals profit. But the real wealth in property is built somewhere in between. In this video, I'm going to show you why buying in the right area, somewhere in the middle ground, is the ultimate hack to long-term success in property investing. And there is a secret ingredient that every experienced investor uses to maximize their profits and increase their portfolio. This is why property stands taller than every other asset. As property investors, what do we typically look for when making a purchasing decision? We look for what the property will bring in as income, and this income is expressed in two ways: capital growth or yield. What is capital growth? How much the property have increased in value over a period. This can be simply worked out by deducting how much you paid for the property from the property's current market value. And you can express this in percentage by dividing it by the property's market value times 100. When you look at yield, yield simply interprets to cash flow. How much in percentage does this property put in your pocket on a monthly or yearly basis? And yield is calculated by multiplying the monthly income times 12. Simply, how much does a property generate annually? Divide this by the value of the property times 100. This gives you the percentage yield that the property offers. So with this in mind, now let's go back into our Bronx, Harlem, and Manhattan concept. The Bronx, Harlem, and Manhattan concept is a template that I've used since I've started investing in property. It helps you pinpoint the best places to invest within a town, city, or a county. So the Bronx represents those inner city, low income, council estates area where you have poor tenant profile. You expect to see a lot of council estates or council houses, like it's called. Crime rate will be higher, and properties there would typically attract a certain type of tenant demographic. And your Manhattan, this is your highbrow affluent area where you have seemingly low crime rate and a better tenant profile. But where the real wealth is made is actually somewhere in the middle. Harlem is your typical middle to high income earners area with very good fundamental, family friendly, the best schools are located in the area. It's got great shops and very good transport links into the main city. Here you have families who wants to find a comfortable space and settle for a long time. Having all these factors in mind, you can see why the real success in property is somewhere in the middle. Whilst the Bronx offers great yield but very poor capital growth, and your Manhattan would offer great capital growth but very poor yield. So if you bring it back to the UK, where I live, no wonder why a lot of towns and cities that are within commutable distance into London had outperformed London for decades when it comes to capital growth, yield, and even better tenant profile. You have towns like Reading, Beaconsfield, Watford, St. Albans, and the likes. These towns for decades usually perform better than London. If we then narrow it down within a particular town, you also don't want to pick up the cheapest property in that town, because that would be your Bronx. And you don't want to go to the high-end properties again within that town. That would be your Manhattan. You want to find that middle ground. That middle ground will offer a lot more in terms of capital growth, in terms of rental yield. It will be more family-friendly area. The best schools in the area would most likely be in those places. Lots of fundamentals, great amenities, and guess what? Very good transport links into the city. That's why you need to find that middle ground wherever you're investing. Leverage is the ultimate hack in property investing. It gives you the ability to control bigger assets, multiply your returns, and grow your portfolio faster without relying on cash. If you're investing in property without leverage, you might as well invest in stock and shares or even bonds, because data shows that a lot of these other asset class had performed much better than property over the years. But leverage makes property a much better investment. To understand this, let's put it in perspective. Let's take the area in the UK that have grown the highest in the past 5 years, from 2019 to 2024. And that's Manchester. Manchester had seen a growth of between 6% to 14% in the past 5 years, from 2019 to 2024. If you compound that, Manchester have actually seen a 44.6% growth in 5 years, which is very, very good for property investing. But the S&P 500 has seen an increase of almost 100% in the same period. So on one hand, you have the S&P 500, which have seen an almost 100% increase. And you have the property market in Manchester, which have seen an almost 50% increase. But when you put leverage into the equation, it changes everything. Example, let's say you have £100,000 to invest and you've put it in the S&P 500. In that period, you would have got a return of almost £200,000. So which means you've doubled your money. And we look at property. If you had £100,000 to invest and you invested it in a property in Manchester that was worth, let's say, £500,000, because you used a mortgage, you used leverage. And in that same period, Manchester saw a 44.6%. So you're talking about the same property now worth about £720,000, which is £220,000 on top of the £500,000 that you bought the property for. You would have made a £220,000 return. So when leverage comes into the equation, it makes property stand tall when compared with other investments and assets. As an investor, using mortgage to make your acquisition is a secret hack that helps you maximize your returns on investment and helps you buy a lot more properties than you should have bought with the money you have. So let's look at this in practical terms. Let's assume you have £450,000 in the bank to invest, and you could just go off and buy a property that is worth £450,000. But if you decide to use leverage and you buy 3 properties instead, £150,000 deposit on each of those properties, and for good reason, the market has done very well. In a few years' time, we've seen a nationwide increase of 10%. If you haven't used leverage, you've made a profit of £45,000, which is 10% of your £450,000. But with leverage, you've technically maximized your profit, because each of those £450,000 property that you bought using leverage, and you bought 3 instead because you've put £150,000 on each, you would have seen the same growth times 3, because each of those properties would have also appreciated by 10%. So without leverage, you'll be making a returns of £45,000. With leverage, you'll be making a returns of £45,000 times 3. This is where property rocks. So at the end of the day, property investing isn't about chasing the cheapest deal or buying the flashiest postcode. It's about stacking the odds in your favor. Buy the right property at the right price in the correct location that fits your strategy using leverage. By doing all this, you'll be guaranteed a decent yield and good capital appreciation. This is the ultimate hack to successful property investing. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, let's build wealth the smart way.